Alright guys, so now we'll move on and we'll talk about round 17. It's a massive round for a lot of teams. A lot of big games that could decide the 8 throughout the season now. And we start off with Thursday night, Richmond versus Sydney. And this is a massive game. I think that Sydney, I think both teams, because as well they've both got that draw, I think this really decides if one of these teams can push for the 8. If whoever loses this game, I think is gone. They'll probably be they'll probably be 10 points outside the 8. And I think that's going to be too much at this point. Because it is at the MCG, I have tipped Richmond. I just think that game against Brisbane last week, probably a little bit of a mulligan, if you could say that, because of the coming off the bye. We've seen a lot of teams this season come off the bye very poorly. I think the Richmond probably been in some really good form as of late, so I think they were kind of due for a loss. And I think back at the MCG against the Swans, I think they got a big chance against them, and I'm going to be picking Richmond in this one. Friday night, another massive game, Bulldogs versus Collingwood at Marvel, which I do think gives the Bulldogs a bit of an advantage. But on the other hand, I think Collingwood's game that they play, I think the Marvel Stadium surface and the quick footy won't exactly hamper Collingwood too much. So in this one, I'm probably going to pick Collingwood as well, just because they're in such good form. I know they lost the game against Melbourne, 3 weeks ago, but I think that Collingwood have definitely got that form back, and I think against the Bulldogs, who have been very up and down this season, have been able to smash the teams below them, but the teams above them they've struggled with. So I'm going to be picking the Pies in this one. After that, we have Brisbane versus West Coast to the Gabba. West Coast may have given St Kilda a bit of a fright, but this game's going to be a smashing. Brisbane win this one, and comfortably. I would be very surprised if this isn't a 100-point winning again for Brisbane. I think the West Coast could be suffering a third 100-point loss in 4 games. So, sorry to West Coast fans out there, but I don't think you'd be that surprised by that one. I think Brisbane are going to win this one and absolutely smash the Eagles. Then we get to Saturday afternoon, GWS versus Hawthorn. I don't believe that James Sicily is back for this one. I think he's got another week left on his suspension. So, with saying that, I think the Giants will win this one. And if they do, they're right upping with a chance to make to get inside the 8. I think they're 4 points behind 8th spot right now, which is Essendon. In fact, they are. They're off by 9%, so they wouldn't actually be in the 8 by the end of the round. But because the Crows and the Bombers both play against each other, one of those teams will be right on that cusp of, that 8th spot. They'll both probably still be in there by the end of the round unless Geelong win, which... we'll get to that in a minute, which they will win, by the way. But, I think the Giants have a really big chance here to maybe even get some percentage on Hawthorn as well, because Hawthorn have been pretty well beatable in the past couple of weeks, especially without their captain. So I'm going to be picking the Giants. I think they'll win this one pretty comfortably as well. After that, we get to Saturday night, St Kilda versus Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. It's a really tough game now because Melbourne have lost another game. They've been in some pretty poor form as well. Lost their past 2 and lost 3 of their past 5. But that's the same as St Kilda. Both these teams have been very iffy form as of late. The reason why I'm going to be picking Melbourne in this one is probably just because I trust them a bit more, to be honest. There's not much method to this tip, to be fair. I think St Kilda could give them a bit of a shake, to be fair. Melbourne, if they can get their running game going at Marvel, I think they could actually run past Melbourne. I think they could be a quicker side, but I just don't trust the Saints, to be fair with yous. And I think that Melbourne could win this. I think Melbourne will win this one. The other Saturday night game is Port Adelaide versus the Gold Coast Suns at Adelaide Oval. The Gold Coast, I don't know. They just don't seem... I don't think they can do it this season. They've just lost some really important games over the past 3 weeks. They lost against Carlton 3 weeks ago, and now they've lost against Collingwood when they really should have had to go and win that game. Or not even have to win, but they had to really perform well to give some sort of confidence. And going to Adelaide Oval against a red-hot Port Adelaide, who are now 12 wins in a row, I don't think they can do it. I think Port Adelaide will go 13 in a row, and I think that they're going to give a real shake to Collingwood towards the end of the year. As they only play, and I think 3 weeks' time, I think it's around, I can't even remember what round it is. I think it's around 19 or 20 when they play Collingwood. I think that game's going to be a massive game of footy at Adelaide Oval. After that, though, Sunday afternoon, Geelong versus North Melbourne down at GMHBA Stadium. Like I said, Geelong are going to be very hard to beat down there this season, and North Melbourne, I think kind of the hype of the Brett Ratton stuff has kind of fallen off now. We saw them lose pretty convincingly against the Crows, and I think Geelong will go and roll over North Melbourne pretty easily, and Geelong basically make the 8 after this game no matter what, and they could definitely make a push towards the finals after that. Then we get to Sunday afternoon, probably the game of the round in my opinion. up there with the Bulldogs versus Collingwood is Essendon versus the Crows. This is a massive game. Both teams teetering on that seventh spot. Have teams fighting around them, to try and get into the top 8. And both of them sit on the same amount of wins at the moment with 8 wins, 7 losses. Percentage, Crows obviously have the better of that with a lot of wins by big margins at home. This one isn't Marvel though, and the only reason why I'm tipping Essendon in this one is purely because of that. The Crows have not been the best outside of home this season. Essendon have been in some pretty good form. I know they have lost their previous 2 games, the Bombers, but they've been against some pretty good opposition. And I'm going to tip Essendon in this one. And I did say when I did make that ladder prediction, a couple of weeks ago, that Essendon in the next 6 weeks would actually lose all their games. But I did say if they were able to snatch one of those wins, then they would be making the finals. And I think that this could be the game that they could do so, and I think they need to, because their next couple of games are going to be tough. So I'm going to be picking Essendon in a real close one. And finally, we get to the last game of the round, Fremantle versus Carlton at Optus Stadium. Again, another massive game. Loser of this one misses the finals, basically, plain and simple. I'm going to be picking Fremantle, and the only reason is because this is home. I think Fremantle are a lot better at home. I think they struggle away. I think that's going to be a big issue for them, and I think it's a lot of issues for for WA teams in general. I'm going to be picking Fremantle in this one. I think they can get over the top of Carlton, who I think have had some pretty easy wins in the past 2 weeks. I don't think anyone can deny that. So that's my tips for this week, guys. Make sure to let me know down below who you're tipping in the... if you think I've got some tips differently to you guys, make sure to let me know. But those are my tips for round 17.